Hello, everyone. We are about to listen to an interview I just did with Erin Michelle, who channels Jesus and is a Course in Miracles student. But before that, I'd like to let you know that we have an in-person Channeling Jesus retreat that still has some spaces available in it. The retreat goes from July 25th to 29th, so next month, and it's on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia, Canada. And if you'd like to join us, please go to channelingjesus.com and all the information is there. We're doing fewer channeled retreats over this coming year. Jesus has been giving us the message to back off a little bit, and as the crazy world out there goes on and on, we can see that maybe traveling and doing all that sort of thing is maybe not the best idea at the time. But this is a local event for me on beautiful Salt Spring Island. So please do go check it out and consider coming. You've got 5 weeks yet. You can book a flight or book a train or however you want to get here. And you will have 4 days of amazing interaction with Jesus and Ananda. We often have other beings that come through at retreats. And of course, you're going to get to meet other Course in Miracles students, other spiritual students. So you get some real life interaction with other people, amazing conversations. The food at the retreat center we're staying at is incredible, all organic, locally grown food. So it's a beautiful event. Please do consider coming and joining us. So go to channelingjesus.com, and Erin Michelle has some contact information in the description box below if you would like to join in her Course in Miracles study group. And of course, we have our ongoing membership on Mighty Networks. That too you can check out on the Channeling Jesus website. And the links to join that are in the description box below as well. So do have a look at those things and stay tuned for How to Save Your Life with Erin Michelle. Thank you. Okay. Welcome everyone to my YouTube channel. I'm super excited today. We have someone with us for our How to Save Your Life series called Erin Michelle. And the reason, hi Erin, and the reason I've asked her to have a chat with us today is because she's been coming across my Facebook feed, and Erin Michelle channels Jesus as well. And I've been reading her posts for quite some time, and it's very much really pure Course in Miracles Jesus teachings that she is channeling, and it's a very refreshing take. Some of the channeling I do, I kind of consider Jesus working with me to sort of do a bridge between the Course and this crazy world we live in. So it's very much, he'll talk about some issues that we have to deal with as humans and current events. And I see Erin Michelle is very pure in her channeling about Jesus' Course in Miracles teaching. And I think there's a really, there's a place for both of those things, because sometimes people find the Course so elevated and esoteric that they have trouble relating it to their lives, when they're going to make their mortgage payment or whatever. So anyway, welcome, Erin Michelle. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, it's very exciting to meet you in person. We've only just met, and I was having trouble with my Zoom thing, and so she's seen me fumbling around for the last 10 minutes. Anyway, it's all fun, this technology, as long as it works. So what I'm going to do is ask you the questions that I've been asking everyone in this series, How to Save Your Life. And the reason I called it How to Save Your Life is because it literally did say, the Course in Miracles really did save someone's life that I knew in my community. She had cancer, and stage 4 cancer. And she spent a month listening to the lessons of A Course in Miracles that I had channeled on YouTube, and just immersed herself for 30 days in the teachings. And at the end of the 30 days, guess what? She was no longer sick. So I called it How to Save Your Life because it has saved someone's life. And I think it's really, obviously you, Erin Michelle, you see the importance of this book, A Course in Miracles, and as I do too. That's why we do this work. So Whereabouts do you live, Erin?
I live in, I'll just call it the Washington, D.C. metro area.
Okay, so you're on the East Coast, so we're 3 hours different time zone here. So the first question is, how long have you been doing the course?
I have been doing the course since, I would say, fully since 2014. So,
Okay, so a decade.
yep. I can't believe that.
I know. Yeah. Well, I do say to people if they're reluctant to do the course, I'm like, well, the decade's going to go past whether or not you do the course. So you may as well throw it in there and it'll help you along. So, what made you start doing the course? Why
Wow.
why did you do it?
Okay, so it's funny how it came into my life. I had always been receiving from Jesus and had communication. He had given me messages to deliver to people, and they were amazing. And I was like, wow, this is so beautifully written and all that stuff. And I thought, wow, I'm great. And I was like, no, this is channeled material. And it was like around 2014. I kind of want to go back because
Yeah,
I was,
totally.
yeah, I was going through all these spiritual things and having lots of experiences where like these lights would appear in front of me and all over the place. I'm like, this is amazing. I want to keep doing whatever I was doing. And at the time, it was modeling. A friend of mine was a photographer and he liked doing modeling pictures, like for like fashion.
Hmm.
So he liked doing pictures of me in unique places. We would go out into like the woods and stuff like that. So, and what would happen was I would start going into this like trance-like state, and I'm like, wow, I'm receiving this beautiful information. I'm seeing these bright lights, and I'm like, if I could just do this forever, that would be great. So I thought, okay, modeling maybe. That was so wrong. You know, I did get into like a small modeling agency, and when I did do a photo session at a usual place, it was awful. I did not get lights and things because it was just so very like focused on form. Whereas in the woods, I'm like I can be in La La Land and check out. And so I was like, this is probably not for me, but I don't know because I can feel this intense message coming from spirit. And I was like, maybe I'll get famous and spirit can give me messages, and because I'm famous, I can share it with more people.
Right. Yeah.
And I did a couple very local runway shows, which was strange. I'll say strange because I did have some very strange like experiences that are not of this world. It's like the what I was seeing, everything looked like there was an actual screen. I'm like, this is like it looks like I'm looking at a movie screen. Everything is in a movie. And I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, this just doesn't feel real. And very strange. And I started getting, really into just doing it anyway. And I didn't know that um, there was a medical thing happening, which came about when I thought this is going to be great. I'm signed to this agency, and maybe I can make it somehow. And then all of a sudden, I had my first experience with multiple sclerosis,
Okay.
and I had like the most intense. Um, I would say the only way I could say is like psychedelic because honestly, like I mean, I wasn't taking anything or anything, but I saw lifetimes. I saw,
Okay.
and I mean, I saw like an idea of hell, which was like, wow, I mean, just horrible stuff, kind of, I mean, very disturbing. And, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I was praying because I was like, okay, Jesus, like, I know that you're with me, but I don't know how to deal with this. And literally, this was like, took about 3 months. I was like in a psychosis for 3 months.
So do you think that was sort of that Kundalini awakening experience? Because that was kind of, I had about 3 months of intense energetic things happening and seeing things, and um, the lead up for me to the channeling was about 3 months of, honestly, if I had gone to a doctor, they would have put me in hospital.
Absolutely. Me too. And actually, come to think of it, I always forget about that part. Before I was doing the modeling, I was actually seeing if I could become a Kundalini yoga instructor.
All
So,
right. So you were getting that
hmm
guidance to go into that energetic world, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So you had this sort of 3 months of what you consider a psychosis. And I think that generally speaking, in the West,
exactly.
that's what they see when a Kundalini awakening is happening.
That's exactly what it was because
Yeah.
my Kundalini definitely was like, wide open, just like I knew the experience when I could feel it rise, like
Mm-hmm.
thing, and then like I wasn't aware of the time, so probably shortly after that was when the 3 month thing started happening. Yeah, well, I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
Yeah. I actually read a book right before I started. Well, it was right when the Kundalini awakening started, and it was called Spiritual Emergency. I can't remember the author's name, but it was going into how the West doesn't handle Kundalini awakenings very well. So um, it was very helpful to me, because what happened with my Kundalini experience, because I'd been doing the course for 12 years when it happened,
hmm
I didn't have any negatives,
mm
because I'd been doing my forgiveness work, and I had been dealing with resentments and all of the things that Jesus teaches us to do in the course.
hmm
So what he has said is that when the Kundalini comes through, and that can happen to you because you've got an assignment, for example. So
right.
obviously one of your assignments is to channel Jesus, as it's one of my assignments.
hmm
And so when that assignment is the time's up for us to start that assignment, and obviously this didn't happen with you in this sense, but what he said was that Kundalini magnifies everything.
hmm
So whatever's kind of negative going on in your mind or your belief systems, Kundalini is going to magnify it. So he's always been quite um, blunt about saying to people, don't don't push for a Kundalini awakening.
Right.
Do do the course, and then
Yeah.
everything will go better,
hmm
because the Kundalini will like if you're a super jealous person, the Kundalini will magnify that, and you'll become even more jealous. If you're a very sexual person, the Kundalini will magnify that, and all hell can break loose, right? So so what was actually the precipitating factor for you starting the course? So you're having all these spiritual experiences, you're seeing things, you're having this, so you had a 3 months of what we'll call it a Kundalini experience rather than a
Yeah.
psychotic break.
Yeah, Kundalini experience.
Kundalini experience.
And it ended with Jesus appearing to me, and he did something where did some things with um his his hands. He was something like this, and then because there was this darkness, it was
Okay.
really, really horrible darkness, and it's like I don't know how to get out of this, and he just came in and moved his hands around, and it was gone.
So darkness, this psychosis or this
Right.
lack of control, you were out, kind of felt like something was overwhelming you a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, very much so. And he
So
got,
where did he appear? In your bedroom?
yeah, like I had this full length, um, china cabinet, and it was glass, and like there was mirror in the back, and I was standing in front of that, and that's where he appeared. So it was like right in front of me there, and just
And what rendition did you see physically? Because people are always so, they want to know what he looks like.
um, I would say he looked like kind of pretty much like what a cane. She was the painter who
Oh,
painted
right. Yes. Yeah. I know yeah, very famous painting of Jesus. Yeah.
like that. So
Okay.
yeah,
So what did he speak to you?
yeah. He obviously it was more. It was coming in through my my mind, but he was in front of me, and it's like the messages were being conveyed without him, in me hearing him vocally, like
Right.
auditorily. So yeah, I could just tell. I I couldn't quite understand, but that things were going to be okay.
Okay. So the darkness that you were feeling left.
Hmm.
And then, so at this point, you haven't been doing the course at this point. You're just having this sort of we'll call it free form Jesus
Yeah,
meeting.
like that. And I can't remember if my aunt. Okay, so around that time, my aunt started doing the course, and she brought it to our house. And it was when something to do with Hay House. And Hay House did this series of like do the course and all that stuff. And
Okay.
um, I sort of became interested in it at that point. And my mom said, "Oh yeah, I tried to do the course many years ago when it first came out." And
Yeah.
she said it was very expensive back then, and that it was all in that not in one solid, not like
Yeah.
the combined version. So she was always
Yeah.
trying to borrow it from the library in the pieces, and she was in competition with this other person who was
Oh,
trying all the time. And then I oh yeah, so anyway, the I then had my first experience with MS, where I had severe vertigo,
okay.
and that was very terrifying. I had to go to the hospital and do an emergency MRI. So I think it was in the hospital for like 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
because they were so short on staff to get this MRI. And was talking to Jesus. I mean, he was talking to me. I wasn't quite sure what was going on at that. I didn't have the course at this point. And he said, "What? I can't see now. It's all like um, I'm not sure what the timeline was at that point, except for the fact that I was in the hospital, and he was telling me that I had to work on some things. I had to work on becoming present in the world and physically in the world, because a lot of my life I had been trying to get away from the world."
Oh, right. Okay. No, I understand that for sure. When I left, when I came to this island that I live on, I was sick of the world. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when the course came to me, was when I moved to this remote place, and then the course came. And because I was in this sort of anti-world kind of
Mm-hmm.
mindset, where I'd been married and divorced a couple of times, failing at this, failing at that. And I was like, I'm out of here. I was not going to commit suicide, but I was really not interested in the world either. So this is an interesting thing that we share, where you sort of,
Yeah.
and I wonder, when I reflect upon that, is that we actually came in with a tendency not to enjoy the world, and that's what makes us actually good channelers.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're sort of half in, half out.
Well, we're kind of in the world, but not of the world, right?
Hmm.
Like I would look, I don't know if you had this experience, but I'd look at people um, living and getting excited about things and being all involved in things. And I'd be like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
I,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah. So I think that might be sort of part of our karmic history showing up where we're like, okay, we've got this assignment to go deeply into Jesus' teachings. And really, if you find them all enthralling or all of that
Hmm.
stuff, you're not going to do it, right? You're not going to,
Right.
because it's kind of a weird path that we're on.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So there was, so were you ever afraid about channeling Jesus? Um,
I was because during that Kundalini awakening portion, there
mhm.
were some entities around me who had ill intent. I'll just
Okay.
say that. And it was very disturbed by them, and I was very afraid that they would take me over.
Okay.
And that's when the archangels showed up.
All right.
That's why I started with channeling the archangels before Jesus,
Okay.
because I felt safe.
Right.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
these are archangels,
But you're
so
like, if I'm channeling angels, no one else can get in here.
yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
you had a very interesting, um, almost the opposite of what happened to me, where I didn't have any real. I had a few moments of insight or psychic, spiritual messaging through my youth, but mine didn't start until after I'd done the course. So yours is kind of the opposite, where this was all happening before you did the course.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
I,
so again, back let's go back to the original question is what made you start doing the course? What was it in your experience that said, okay, I'm going to do this?
okay, so I will say that it was Jesus told me to do
Oh,
it.
okay.
He said one day, I think it had to have been like 20, maybe it was 2012, 2013. He said, go to Barnes and Noble and buy A Course in Miracles and start reading it. And I
Oh,
was like, okay, this is so cool. I have this assignment to go get A Course in Miracles. And then um, it's amazing once I got it, then all of a sudden I started meeting all these people who are doing A Course in Miracles. And I'm like, wow.
okay. Okay. So he told you. So that's really cool. He didn't tell me to do it. My sister bought it. We were having this very intense time in our family. We'd had a big fight with our mom, and I was going to see my kids at Christmas, and it was this really intense time. And she went into, well, Chapters, which is the Canadian version of Barnes and Noble, and she bought the course, and she said to me, I don't know why I bought this. You should read it. And so she threw it on my lap, and I'd never heard of it before. So I didn't know what it was. So that's very cool that he told you specifically to read the course.
Hmm. And yeah, I got it, and it was like immediately, I'm like, oh, this book feels, what I'm reading feels like home.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is amazing. Because he also told me before I started, or maybe it was the archangels told me before I started really channeling. Um, they said we have to clean up some things in you before you start channeling.
Okay, so so was he specific about those things?
I think that I became aware of those things as I was reading the course.
Okay.
It's like, so it's like, wow, these things are just coming up in my awareness. And it's basically the course is like, here's how to look at these things.
Right. Okay. Because that is, when I kind of jokingly say that the course should have a warning on the
Yeah.
label that beyond here there be dragons, because
Yeah.
you're actually going to go into your own mind and you're going to see where the problems are coming from.
Yep.
Because most people who don't do the course or haven't done the course, they see all their problems as other people or society or the world, right? Whereas what Jesus is teaching us through the Course is that it's all coming from within our own consciousness.
Exactly.
And we project it out to quote unquote get rid of it, but we never get rid of it that way. It's still contained within us, but it can be. So, for example, I'll say to someone, if someone says something, a word or a phrase or a statement that you don't like, the anger could come up or reaction could come up. So if you're in the ego mind, you'll say that person caused this problem in me. Whereas if you're a course student, you'll go, oh, wow, something has arisen in me. It must have always been there. It just got activated by the other person. So that would be part of the forgiveness practice, right? Would be they're not the problem. This thing is in me. It's living in me, the anger or the jealousy or whatever it is. And it seems like such a simple difference between blame and accepting responsibility, but it changes everything, right?
It really does.
So you could see these aspects of yourself, and they came to light. And when you were to go back to the kind of format of the questions here, just to keep us on track, is when you were doing the lessons of A Course in Miracles, did you start them first, or did you start just reading the text first? How did that go for you?
I started with the text first.
Okay.
And then I just
all 600 pages of it.
yeah. And then and then I started doing the workbook along with reading the rest of the course.
Right.
And I felt very drawn to the later lessons, of course. And I'm like, this makes sense to me. And I could tell Jesus is like, you need to start from the beginning, because there are things in the beginning that you have to look at, or that will bring up things in you that you're not aware of.
Oh, right. So you leapt ahead to later lessons and he reined you in and told you to go back to the beginning?
Yep.
Well, that's amazing that you have such specific guidance from him.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. And so you had all of these psychic experiences and conversations with Jesus before the course, and then he tells you to take the course and you do it, even though you do it incorrectly at first, and then he fixes you. What transformations happened to you now after doing the lessons and beginning the course? What was the difference that you began to experience?
Well, there was a lot of anger in me that I didn't really realize was there.
Okay.
Um, and it's really helped me to see my own responsibility in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned to give it up. And that's like, it's so simple. Just give it up, let it go. It's like, it's not that big a deal if you just let it go. And it's like the freedom that you get
Yeah.
when you just change your mind about something.
Well, that's what he says in the course. You can choose again. You can change your mind, right? And this is one of the things I think that comes up in the text. Obviously, he has these very specific processes where, so for example, if you're finding yourself in a bad mood in the middle of the morning, and he says you've made some incorrect choices, go back and look at what you've done to make yourself angry or sad or depressed or whatever the struggle is. So there are some very systematic prescriptions in the text to help us manage our minds and to learn how to be peaceful. So you said that you had some sicknesses showing up. Did he mention, was that part of your anger, part of these things that you had to deal with, or has he talked to you about that?
A little bit. I think mostly he wants me to focus on the more psychological things, or just mind things in general, and looking at the disease differently.
Yep.
He's like, because it's either going to go or not.
Right.
So, but you don't have to let that rule your life.
Right.
And so that's been huge because I was very depressed in the beginning of that, and
Mhm.
now it just is what it is for me. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we all come in with stuff, right? We all come in with issues that we're working on, or I'll call what I call it is usually karmic history. Is there's things we come into this life with that we don't necessarily understand.
Mm.
Um, so you did the lesson. Did you struggle with the lessons at all, or did you find that was pretty? I mean, obviously Jesus told you to do it, so you have sort of the ultimate teacher guiding you there. So,
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't have any struggles with doing the lessons so much. Um, I would say the only part that would be a struggle, so to speak, would be remembering to do
oh yeah,
it.
yeah. It is very difficult to remember, and I love how he says. There's one point in the lessons where he goes, "You may have noticed that you have no mental. You may have noticed that you can't remember anything."
Hmm. Yep.
So it's kind of perfectly normal. Um,
Mhm.
and so you're doing the course lessons. He is showing you and helping you see where you've got some mind training or healing to have happen. Um, so you took the course like 2015, 2014, something like that? Yeah. When did you start channeling and then beginning to share your channeling? When did that?
I would say 2011. So after the Kundalini.
Okay. Oh,
So
channeling the archangels.
right, and I was that's when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So, um, but whenever I channeled, I felt better. So I always wanted to,
Yeah.
and I would just do it for my family
Right.
for a little while, and then eventually, um, I was guided to join this. It was called the Psychic Support Group.
Because yeah, you kind of need support if you're doing this kind of.
Yeah, it was more of the spiritual psychic. I mean, the guy who I don't know if he still has one, but when he was running it, he was extremely psychic.
Right.
He's one of those very, very gifted people. He could see things, and
Mhm.
um, so then he said, "Why don't you start channeling in this group?" So I was like, "Okay." So I did channeling of the archangels a few times for the group, and then eventually one of the members opened a wellness center, and she wanted me to channel at the wellness center. And then um, interestingly, I don't know how that happened, but suddenly it was like, you need to move to Arizona. Oh, it had to do with, let's see if you will get better in Arizona because it's dry
Yeah.
and it's very humid um, in this part of the United States. And so we moved to Arizona, and it's true that the dry heat was a huge relief.
Mm-hmm.
I would not say the heat is a relief, but the fact that it was dry.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I did a bunch of channeling there.
Okay.
And then I moved to Pismo Beach, California, where Jesus also said that I was going to move. And which is so funny. I'm like, wow, it's so funny because I was like, Pismo Beach, that doesn't sound like a great place for some reason. I'm like,
I think Pismo is just the worst name for a beach. It's a
I know. I'm like, well, What
How
about, I thought
far
back
of
then, I'm like, what about San Francisco or like Los Angeles or San Diego? He's like, it's Pismo
Pismo
Beach.
Beach is actually a beautiful area.
I love it. It's my favorite part of California.
Yeah,
I
really
love
lovely.
it.
Yeah.
And I channeled there for, while I was there, I did like a weekly channeling for a group. And that's when I started channeling Jesus, actually, when I moved to Pismo Beach.
And how was that for you? Like when you started channeling him in public, how did that feel for you?
It felt very comfortable.
Okay.
It felt more comfortable. I don't know how to put it. It's just different. It was different than channeling the angels. His messages are basically A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
So nothing like, whereas like the archangels could answer questions that were more like out there. Jesus is like, I'm not going to answer those questions. You have to focus on this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, no. Yeah. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I know sometimes, if I'm going to do a video on this whole war thing that's coming up, and because I will sometimes do that, I can feel that he wants me to do a video on something. And
Mhm.
so often he will just revert right to Course in Miracles teachings. Like people want to know who's going to win and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, no, that's not what we're talking about. He'll
Exactly.
take it right back to your own mind and forgiveness practice and attack thoughts and all of the classic things that the Course deals with.
Yeah,
But of course, that's the world, right? Like this 3D world is the ego's playground. This is where you see the ego doing its thing, which is death and destruction and sickness and dying and all of that stuff. And his purpose is to get us above the battleground.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, and so he is relentlessly consistent in keeping us focused.
It's true. It's so funny. It's also funny how many people, when I was, when I actually, since I've been channeling, but in the beginning, we had a lot of people coming in who wanted to argue with Jesus. And it's just like, it's not going to happen. He just cuts right through it and gives like the most direct
Yeah,
answer. And I'm just like, wow, that's all I needed to hear.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we're all on this journey, right, of evolution and coming to see how we cause our own problems. Arguing with Jesus would be one of them. I mean, because really, if he was in the room, would you argue with him?
I
Probably
know, I
not,
say that all the time. It's like, if Jesus were here, would you really have an issue? Would you really argue with him and say, no, that's not true? And all
Yeah,
that? No, you wouldn't. I mean, you'd be in awe.
we'd be, oh, yeah, yeah. But of
Yeah,
course, if he was in person, someone would have put him in a mental asylum.
I know.
They wouldn't let him teach if he was here.
Not at all.
They just wouldn't. So, okay, so the course is that helped you, and what what would you say to people who haven't done the course yet? Why should they do it?
I would say, I would actually first say, don't you want to just be okay? Don't you want to just be at peace with the world and be able to think clearly? I wouldn't say it like that necessarily, but it would, like, don't you want to be free? I think that's what I would say. Don't you want to be free?
Right.
That's my main question for everyone is, don't you want to be free?
Yeah.
It's like, well, the course gives you all the tools on how to become free.
What would you say to people who might say to you, "Well, I am free. I can do whatever I want."
I
What
would
would you
say,
someone who said, I am free"?
and I would say, okay, all right, you're free then, you know, um, then
Then you don't need it.
you don't need it. Yeah. If you're really, really free, you don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there anything else you'd just like to share about your experience as a channeler, or the effect the course has had on you, or anything like that in closing, just to kind of wrap it up?
I will just bring it back to freedom.
Freedom.
It's literally freed me from so much, like feeling like I have to um, be something in the world.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely was like, I'm gonna be something. I'm like, no. She was like, no, you're not. And actually, even that psychic who, at that group that I was attending, he said, he gave me a reading and he said, um, so this lifetime is not a lifetime and not an elevated lifetime. And my ego is very hurt by that.
Yeah.
Very disappointed. Now I'm like, I'm so glad it's not. Um,
Yes.
I want to be free because there's no freedom in that thinking of like, oh, I've got to get somewhere and be something. And that's really what I've been freed from. A lot
Mm.
more than that, but that was definitely the big one around that time that I came to the course, was like, I need to be something.
Yeah, I totally identify with that. I was a wildlife artist in my 30s,
Hmm.
and I wanted to be the best wildlife
Hmm.
artist. And it was the same thing. I wanted to be someone, and I think, it's the classic ego trip of specialness, right?
Yep.
And when the course came into my life over those years, um, right before I had the Kundalini awakening, I had come to, so probably 10 years into doing the course at that point, I had decided that I was going to live this anonymous, quiet life with no specialness. Like the 10 years of doing the course had erased from my mind this need to be someone.
Hmm.
And I think that that's when Jesus began to come through, because it was sort of like, oh, that ego has been quelled now.
Hmm.
Because, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but you can see, I can notice it, is that you can have quite a lot of influence when you're channeling Jesus. And
Hmm.
I think it's a kind of an important thing to not have that ego aspect powerful, where you want the power, or you want to influence
Right.
people. Like, the only thing that I ever do is I only ever want to influence people to do the course. That's it. That's
Yeah,
my
exactly.
job,
That's,
right?
yep.
Because then the Jesus and the Holy Spirit will take over.
Take over, exactly.
So it's got nothing to do with me. It's just I'm the messenger, and that's it. But I can see that 20 years before, if
Mm.
I had had this experience, there would have been that ego aspect of mind that would have caused trouble.
Yep,
Sort.
exactly. That's so true.
Yeah. So, and I do say to people, because sometimes people will say, I want to channel, and I say, then do the course.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the course will quell the ego. It doesn't get rid of your ego, but it smooths everything out. It gets you calm and peaceful. And one of the things that people would say to me when this subject of channeling Jesus comes up, and I talk about the Kundalini awakening, for example, and they say, well, weren't you afraid? And I said, no, I'd been doing the course for 12 years when that happened.
Mm.
So I had been doing all this forgiveness work and prayer and meditation and all the things we do in doing the course. So I said, when the Kundalini awakening started for me, I knew I was in a good place. I didn't need to be afraid, because I'd been hanging out with Jesus for 12 years at that point, right? So I was like, this is nothing to fear. And I think that, in the beginning of one of the books, early on, they said that when spirit makes contact, and I think this probably, it doesn't sound like you were really afraid, but you certainly had some interesting experiences. The idea of insanity and possession come up very, very quickly for people.
Hmm.
And that this is one of the reasons doing the course is such a good idea, because you actually start to understand how your mind works. You understand when you're creating fears. You can discern when you get triggered. You can really understand what's going on inside of you. Whereas but it sounds to me like your channel opened early. It opened early, and there were some problems with it, obviously, with the dark entities or feeling fear.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So would you recommend, if someone wants to channel, that they do the course first?
Yeah. Absolutely. Because you need to understand all of this before you open yourself up to God knows what. You
Yeah.
want to be able to have it open only to spirit. And so I feel like the course is the only way. I mean, I know there are many ways, but I
Yep.
would say the clearest way and I would say the safest way.
Safe way. Well, in the channelings, Jesus has said, he goes, just like you can meet really nice people and really bad people in
Mhm.
the spirit world, you've got the whole spectrum as well. So you don't want to open your mind up to whatever you don't know, right? Is anyone there? Has anyone got a message for me?
Right.
That's not a good idea.
Not at all.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually grew up in a spiritualist household, and we had to have the house exorcised when I was about 10
Wow.
because we were all playing on the Ouija board,
Mm. Yeah.
and with no prayer protection, nothing like that, right? And we actually had to get the house exorcised. And for many decades, I would have nothing to do with anything psychic or anything spiritual because of there was that event. And then when I was about 15, I went to see The Exorcist.
Oh no.
And well, I left after about half an hour, but
Mhm.
it scared the living daylights out of me. And for years and years and years, I would never, ever have anything to do with anything spiritual in that sense, because I was like, there's some bad things out there.
Mhm.
And that was one of the blessings of the course for me, was it was that beautiful, slow, caring, loving reintroduction to spiritual communication.
Exactly.
So I think for anyone who's been scared by spiritual stuff, or has, like, they start thinking about channeling or thinking about communication and they're like, oh, I can't do it, I would
Mhm.
say get the course and work with Jesus, because he'll guide you how to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your story, and it's lovely to meet you in person. I'll turn our recording off and we can chat afterwards.
Okay.
Is
Good. Thank you.
Do you have a YouTube channel or a community or anywhere that people can share your work?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is just Erin Michelle Galito.
Okay.
And then I have my Facebook, which is just, I have an Erin Michelle Galito author page, and I also have my personal page, which is just Erin Michelle. It's kind of hard to find because there's millions of Erin Michelles.
Melly. I'll put those links in the description below so that people can find you. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And look in that description box below, and you can find out where to find Erin's work. It's really amazing. It's been really enjoyable for me to read it every day on Facebook. I really enjoy it. So thanks, everyone. I'll see you again soon.